What's going on, guys? My name is Triforce Addiction. Welcome back to another COD Mobile video. So today I am going to be talking about a recent trend that I've been seeing on YouTube pertaining to this game, which of course is whether or not COD Mobile is actually dying. I saw a few YouTubers actually talk about this, specifically Capo YT, because I guess he also noticed the huge amount of videos talking about whether or not COD Mobile is dying. And I decided to just give my 2 cents on the situation as well. I wasn't originally going to make something like this, but given that we're a little bit less than a week away from season 8 and there's really nothing else to cover for season 7, I thought it was pretty fitting to just make a video like this, just to, I guess, hold you guys over for the next season. So again, there's a huge trend going on YouTube. Maybe not huge, but there is a trend nonetheless going on YouTube about people just making videos talking about how COD Mobile is kind of dying. So again, I want to give you guys my personal opinion on the situation. And to tell you the truth, I honestly don't really agree that much. And that's mainly because I'm comparing this game to the current Call of Duty, which of course is Black Ops 6. And I know that game for a while was at least kind of doing well, only because Verdansk came back. And I even said some good things about that as well. But, given that, the Beavis and Butthead skins came out and, Black Ops 7 is also being announced, yeah, it didn't really look like it's actually doing well, at least now. It seems a lot of players from that game are just tired of the skill-based damage, skill-based matchmaking, whatever you call it over there, as well as just the overabundance of bundles that they sell, which makes it seem like they care more about selling those bundles than actually fixing the game. Here in COD Mobile, it's a little bit the same, but not to the same degree, because yes, they do care about selling draws and selling, series armories and mythic weapons and stuff, but at least they try to fix the game. Especially this entire year where they added the secret cash system, the wild cards, the new class setups. They've done a lot already, more than what they probably would have done in about maybe 2 or 3 years. And it seems to make a lot of people happy. Of course, some of the changes, like the class setup system, they think it's a little flawed. But of course, I think most of the players are actually kind of grateful for it. They just want it to be a little bit more refined. Not only that, we got like badass camos. We have Sunken Gambit. We have the Power Nova, as well as Ocean Waves. We basically have all that stuff that usually probably would have taken years for us to normally get. And what I mean by that specifically is just, there would always be that one good seasonal camo every now and then, but it was very rare when it happened. And I think the tournament camos was a pretty good example, because for a long time, we were just getting nothing but stationary camos, but now we're actually starting to get something a little bit more better. I mean, I would say Sunken Gambit is probably the best thing that we've gotten since maybe Fluorescence. Shimmering camo was pretty good as well, but I don't think the colors were that great. I think if it was like red or green or like yellow, or like much more yellow, like if it was a little bit more vibrant, I think it would have been better. But point is, COD Mobile has been improving the game a lot, much more than what, the normal devs from Treyarch are doing with Black Ops 6. Of course, COD Mobile isn't without its flaws. I mean, there's sometimes some bugs that, they're not really game-breaking, but they could be an inconvenience at times, but they usually get fixed a season later, or maybe after a major update. But I would say the COD Mobile's biggest problem that we have that kind of leaks into ranked, because I think that's the mode that's suffering the most, is definitely just the weapon balancing. Weapon balancing is something that COD Mobile will always suffer with. I don't think there's ever going to be a perfect balance with this game. The only hope that we have is that maybe there's a lot more variety within ranked and just regular multiplayer. But I'll admit, this past year has been kind of terrible, at least when it comes to balancing, because all the newer weapons that come out, well, with the exception of few, have been pretty overwhelming. The VMP, the USS-9, the BP-50. Yeah, those weapons are much more overwhelming than what we've ever received in the past. But not only that, they've stayed way too overpowered for too long. And I know a lot of people usually bring up how overpowered and how annoying the Fennec, or I guess the double Fennec meta was. But keep in mind, that was a very short-lived meta. It lasted about maybe a season or two, and then it finally got nerfed, like that. I know that meta was pretty toxic, but again, it wasn't something that lasted like over a year. But with the USS-9, BP-50, VMP, all those weapons have been in the meta for a long time. And there will be people that argue that the CBR was the longest meta, which I agree, but keep in mind, there were a few weapons that could at least battle against those. But with the USS-9 and the VMP being probably the most broken weapons in ranked right now, I would say, yeah, there's not really much that could stop them. But does it mean the game's dying? Obviously not, because I mean, we still have the whole BR side. And keep in mind, I mean, here we don't have to worry about SBMM in normal lobbies. Unless we're playing ranked, that's the only time we ever have to deal with SBMM. And I will admit the skill-based matchmaking here is pretty flawed as well, where, you know, you could be a pretty decent player and you'll always get matched with like the worst people in your team. And then somehow like the enemy team that you're facing is just like way better than your team. It's like, yeah, I could understand why people don't like that type of balancing. But again, ranked here is optional, despite what many other people say. But yeah, ranked is not something that you have to endure all the time. And I've been making videos this entire month just talking about that, how like if you're feeling overwhelmed, you could always just play normal modes, maybe grind a few weapons, just, you know, take your mind off just the madness. And again, a lot of people make that mistake because they're simply saying that the game is dying just because ranked is in a bad place. They're disregarding BR, they're disregarding zombies, Undead Siege. I know people kind of, you know, grind for high scores over there. So there's other modes to enjoy. And yes, ranked is kind of suffering, but I mean, are you really going to say just because ranked is suffering, you know, the game is just going to die? Honestly, in a weird way, I mean, a really weird way, we should just be grateful that weapon balancing is the only issue that we have. Because if we had like the bad skill-based matchmaking, terrible connections, packet bursts, all the things that all the mainline CODs are suffering with, we probably wouldn't be playing this game. And again, I think the only solution for fixing balancing in ranked is just to have a restrictions list. Because again, like I said, no matter what changes that they make in the patch notes, there's never going to be a perfect balance. No matter how many weapons they buff or nerf, there's always going to be that one weapon that's going to be completely dominant. So a restrictions list would probably be the best way to go about things, you know? Like, let's say, for example, the USS-9, you could probably keep it in ranked, but you cannot use the 32 AE rounds. Or if you're using the Man of War, you're not allowed to use the FMJ rounds, or not the FMJ, the Thermite rounds. They could do all that stuff, including like, especially with like the SKS or the Type 63. I know those are pretty annoying marksman rifles that are still kind of plaguing ranked. They could have it so that you could only use the 10-round mag. I know in Modern Warfare 3, they also had some restrictions against using suppressors. At least for the ranked mode, I think that's something that the community would have to like decide on, because I don't really know how everyone's going to feel about that. But I think a restrictions list is really the best way to solve the ranked issue. And despite this game being almost 6 years old, I'm actually surprised they never came up with that. And I think they might be having a lot of trouble with the restrictions list, mainly because, of course, they don't really know how we're gonna, you know, take the news. You know, we don't know how we're gonna handle the whole situation. And also, if they ban weapons outright completely from ranked, then how are people going to get mastery over them? You know, like how are they going to get those 3,500 points to get master on their weapon? Unless they go to BR, but of course, sometimes that could take a little bit longer. And that's why I mentioned, you know, banning certain attachments to at least kind of compromise the weapon's ability. You know, like I said, giving a 10-round mag for the SKS, that's the only way that you can use it. You know, something like that, to not make it too spammable, or like they have to constantly reload every time they kill maybe a few people. But then again, also the question of, you know, snipers for search and destroy. I mean, those things are just built to be really fast. I mean, they could just slow them down or something. I don't know. But yeah, I mean, if we have a weapons restriction list, it would definitely help a lot. And I know I've spent most of this video talking about ranked because really, again, this is the only mode that's really suffering. The rest are suffering in different ways. They're not suffering from balancing, they're just suffering from a lack of content. Zombies, for example, Undead Siege specifically hasn't really been updated that much as of recently. The only updates that they're doing is that they're adding Ether Crystal for all the new guns that come in, which is cool. But, you know, we don't have any new maps, no new camos, no new blueprints to grind for, because I would say most of us are already at the final tier of that battle pass. As for BR, I'm not really that sure. Maybe the weapon balancing, it might be a little bit better ever since the 117 got nerfed. Or, you know, maybe this, you know, the shotgun nerfs also might have done something that is good in the eyes of BR players. But I mean, you know, content's always coming into BR no matter what. And plus, I think we're getting a new map for BR anyways. So is the game dying? at least in terms of ranked, it's suffering. I wouldn't say dying, but it is definitely suffering. But also, I mean, we can't really even tell how many players are actually playing the game. And that's the thing. Back then in old Call of Duty games, they used to like show the player count, but they don't really do that anymore. Activision kind of has this weird, dirty way of like kind of keeping the illusion that the game is actually succeeding when it might not actually be succeeding at all. And I do know for sure that, they're going to talk about COD Mobile's achievements by like, talking about how many downloads it's had, but also you have to factor in how many of those downloads or how many of those accounts that are made are alt accounts and how many of them are still actually active. They could say that, oh, well, there's like a million or like, sorry, there's probably over a billion accounts that have been created for COD Mobile, but at the same time, half of those could be comprised of alt accounts and just inactive accounts, people that haven't played it for a long time. So at least when it comes to COD Mobile, as far as my knowledge goes, I'm not really sure if we could actually tell how many players are currently playing the game. I'm not even sure if there's a million players. I can't be too certain of that. But if the numbers are low, I mean, again, bringing in a PC port, if they announce that in COD Next by some miracle, that could probably increase the player count by a lot. Honestly, I think that's basically all I have to say for this video. I'm trying to have like the most neutral take as much as possible. And yeah, I mean, the game definitely isn't dying. I think people are just doing that just for clicks. But anyways, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Make sure to leave a like, make sure to subscribe for some more COD Mobile content, and I'll see you guys next time.